Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Financial Tides. Today, we are going to be discussing the future of Social Security. It's a hot topic right now. I'm your host today, Taylor Perillo, Certified Financial Planner. And I really just want to unpack some of the noise and kind of what's happening with Social Security. So, I think to start, we have to talk about what Social Security is and what it's going through. And I think for the most part, everyone understands that Social Security is a payment similar to a pension plan, but it's a lifelong payment for you that you've been paying into as long as you're working and working for an employer. But we are facing a shortfall in this country that I think is pretty well documented. And really, we have to face that at some point. So, to start, we'll cover that the shortfall is really going to be happening sometime in the 2030s. They're estimating right now it to be about somewhere between 2032 and 2035. And that shortfall is really not that Social Security is going away, that it's insolvent. They're going to have to file for bankruptcy. I think that's kind of a common misconception that a lot of people think that because there's going to be a shortfall then that Social Security is going to be completely gone. All it means right now is that we're running out of the reserves in Social Security. So basically, whatever comes in is what can actually go out at that time in Social Security, which is only about 77% of the promised benefits at this time. And that's, again, a rough estimate based on current longevity and current funds coming in and current projections. So, not insolvent, it just means that at the very worst, and we do absolutely nothing. We'll wake up one month and the benefits that are being paid out will only be able to be paid out to 77% of what they are currently. So that's the first kind of topic to address and make sure that everyone's on the same page about. The second is really just why Social Security is running out. So everyone's kind of wondering where all these funds went because there's a lot of news headlines right now that all these dead people are getting Social Security. And I think that's the reason why the program's running out. There's a number of reasons beyond that. That's one of the reasons is that there's a little bit of fraud and even accidental payments that go out. But the main reasons are is the first is Social Security is being funded by a payroll tax, 6.5 percent from each employee, and then the employer matches it another 6.5%. But back in 1980, the ratio of workers was every three workers, there was one retiree. Now it's less, which every two workers, there's one retiree. So the numbers don't really match up the way they used to back in 1980 because there's less workers that are actually paying into the benefits that are covering the payout for the actual retirees. The second reason is Americans are living longer. We have good longevity, we have good health care, and people are just having longer lifespans as a result of all of that. So, where back in the day when Social Security was originated, only 10 to 15 years is a typical lifetime payout for these retirees, we're seeing retirees live 20 to 30 years now. So, again, that's a longer benefit period that has to be paid out for longer periods of time. Next is wage growth. So you'll hear cost of living adjustment on Social Security a lot, and everyone knows that as inflation and things get more expensive, it adjusts. Wages don't always match up with that. So you'll hear it a lot with people of the job hopping variety that say the only way to get a fair cost of living adjustment and fair raise is to go to a different job and switch jobs. So that's the other problem if people stay in one job and they're not getting any raises or a cost of living adjustment that's not equal to what Social Security is paying out. You're having lagging wage growth that is attributing to how much goes in, being it's a percentage that you're paying in based on your wages. And then the last and final thing that really contributes to it is just the cap that they put on taxable earnings. So you only pay Social Security up to a certain cap. That cap is $168,600 in 2024. It increases a little bit each year, but basically somebody that makes $500,000 a year from their job, pays the same amount of Social Security tax as somebody that makes 168,600. There's no difference. It's capped out. So the very high earners aren't paying anything additional into Social Security. And the original reason for that was they're not getting any additional benefits beyond that for earning that much more. They have the same capped Social Security that everybody else gets above that. So that's part of the reason why is we have a capped amount. So that percentage stops after 168,600. So those are some of the reasons. And then the other one is just some of the places the funds have gone outside of those main reasons is there's divorced spouses. So any marriage that's lasted 10 plus years and they haven't remarried, they can claim up to 50% of their ex-spouse's benefits. So there's a generation and many generations that had two or three marriages that each lasted 10 years plus, and all three of those spouses, I think it's up to four total, can claim 50% of that one person's benefits, regardless of how much they paid in. So that's one places where there's a common long periods of marriages that lasted 10 plus years that resulted in divorce that were claiming benefits. So that's one. Surviving spouses. So regardless of whether the spouse has paid in or not, if the spouse survives longer, which oftentimes if future generations or past generations the norm was that the there would be stay-at-home mothers or the woman would stay at home, and that's just the past generation norms, and they wouldn't pay into Social Security. And then on the flip side of that, they would live longer than men. So they would live longer, keep the benefits going. So that's kind of another thing that we're seeing is there was no pay into Social Security on their part, but they are extending the benefit out. So that's another way that the money is being spent and where the funds are going that's causing it to decline quicker than some might have expected. And then the last is just frauds and error, which I touched on a little bit there. There has been some benefits paid out to deceased individuals and people that had identity theft, where they were claiming somebody else's social security. So there's some times where the administration does recoup this money, but it's not all the time. And that's part of what's causing the main public trust taking a hit in that aspect. So really this program was meant to provide protection to people and give them a guaranteed income in retirement to make sure that they're not going to become wards of the state. But now it's just because everybody's losing faith in it, it's becoming less and less reliable for people to really feel that protection. So there's a couple different ways now, I think, really to prolong the program that we really need to discuss because at this point, going down to 77%, it's an option, but it's not a great option. So we need to do something about it because we can't just afford to take this money from retirees that are relying on it. So there's a couple different ways, and the sooner we fix it, the better. We don't necessarily think that it's going to come soon, unfortunately, just because it seems to be that nobody wants to touch Social Security because that's where the voters are. So obviously, as a politician, they want to delay it and let somebody else deal with it during their term. So as we get closer and closer to 2035, that's when we expect it to actually be dealt with, even though dealing with it now would yield the best results. So the first solution could be raising the retirement age. So we've seen this done in the past where they went from it being age 65 to gradually raising it up to age 67. Something like that could happen again where they gradually move it up to 68 or 70, depending on where the actual line falls. And the logic there is just that people are living longer. So the benefits need to actually pay out longer. So starting it later would shorten that period. So that's one of the ways that I think is the most common that people can agree upon, and it's been done in the past. So I think that's probably the most likely. The second one would be lifting the payroll tax cap. So if you got rid of this 168,600 limit, it could bring in more revenue from higher earners. The only downside to something like that is those higher earners are going to expect a higher benefit as a result because they're paying in more. So they'd have to either use that and keep the benefits capped. In which case that might infuriate some people, especially the higher earners. But I think that's a little less likely just because of the fact that you're not getting an equal benefit for what you paid into it. The next one is increasing payroll taxes. So this is basically across the board. Instead of having a 6.2% that both the employer and employee pay into it, they could raise it to something like 6.5 or 7 and create more income coming in. So they're just trying to extend the solvency at that point. That's not really a permanent solution, because really previous generations, having so many people on Social Security right now, that's just slightly extending it. And I could see that being a temporary solution. The last is the most controversial, which is just reducing benefits and I think slowing the cost of living adjustments so people aren't feeling the shock all at once of taking a pay cut, but basically not getting increases year over year. It would be tough because it'd be hard for retirees to keep up with inflation over a long period of time, but it's just something that is an option and is on the table. All of these have consequences one way or another, but I think the biggest consequence would be just letting everyone drop down to 77% of their current benefits. So I think they have to do something on there. So, next topic on Social Security is really what I think is a huge common misconception because on the election trail this year, they were talking about no tax on Social Security benefits. I don't see how this is possible. I think a lot of people are hopeful for it and a lot of people want this, but I don't think there's a way to do it. I can't see them having money within a struggling program to say, hey, we're just not going to tax this anymore. So Social Security doesn't tax the actual benefit, but the IRS can, and they do right now, depending on your income level. Up to 85% is typically taxable for those above 34,000 or 44,000 if you're married. And then under that, they have 50% or even zero if Social Security is really your only income source. So I think there's one other real thing that I think is worth noting, and it's what they've done with Medicare. And that's really just having a means testing. And this is what I think probably will be a solution for it. And that's just the fact that, again, this is controversial because the high income earners would be paying more, but again, they've already done something like this before, and they did it with Medicare, which is just if you've heard of IRMA, the Income Related Medicare Adjustment Act, it's where you pay the same or you pay a larger amount on your Medicare coverage than your neighbor would just because you earn more. So it makes sense because you have more money to pay for it. They're gonna have you pay more for your Medicare. Same thing with Social Security. If you make too much in or in income, you won't need your Social Security as much as the logic there. So they're going to either say maybe you don't get a cost of living adjustment because you made too much, or you're going to get a reduced benefit because you made too much, etc. So that's something that we could see and something we can look out for. But again, there's something that we have to do. We're facing real problems, and it's not a complete lost cause because 77% is better than nothing. I think a lot of people out there are losing faith, and that's kind of appropriate at this point in time. My generation, I'm telling people not to ever count on Social Security. I think if it's there, it's a bonus, but if you can save and take the appropriate action now to build yourself into a position that it's just bonus money if it is there, I think that's great. I don't think it's going to go away, but you don't ever want to count on something and then end up failing to plan accordingly. So we always say you don't fail to plan, or you don't plan to fail, you fail to plan. So plan ahead, plan like it's not going to be there, and then best case scenario, you have some bonus money to live off of in retirement. So last thing, we encourage you to check your estimates for your benefits on SSA.gov. They can send you exactly what you're projected to get on the website. They'll send you a little form showing the difference at different ages, between 62 and age 70. So thanks for tuning in to Financial Tides. You have a great rest of your day. See you next time.
John Perillo and Taylor Perillo are financial advisors offering securities through Cetera Advisors LLC, a registered broker-dealer, doing insurance business in California as CFGA Insurance Agency LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera firms are under separate ownerships from any other named entity. California insurance licenses number 0F60123 and 0M90666, 6265 Greenwich Drive, Suite 251, San Diego, California 92122. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Advisors LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Neither Cetera Advisors LLC nor any of its representatives may give legal or tax advice.